What a question our dear friend Wendell is attempting to, or will attempt to, answer. Are we truly free? This is the question of all questions. I think this is the first. Are we truly free? I surely would like to know. Wendell, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here in person. Hello, all of you watching through the internet, wherever you are, whenever it is. I am truly happy to be here. It's been a while, 8 months since I left Baltimore. I think it was about time to stop by and say hi to my dear friends. I had some promises of friends to visit us there. Not happened yet. Right, Miss Paula? Right, Isabella, maybe she's listening. Yeah, but anyway, really happy to be here. Thank you all for making a good use of your free will, of your freedom, and decided to be here today reflecting on the teachings of Jesus, explained by the doctrine of spirits. Today we will try to think about this question. I don't know if I will be able to answer, but maybe everyone will go back home with this question inside and maybe thinking about the answer. Are we truly free? A reflection on the law of freedom, one of the moral laws according to Spiritism, and how our freedom is deeply connected to the fulfillment of the divine law. As I always do, I'm sharing my research source. For today, I use the Spirit's book, The Gospel According to Spiritism. The book has Liz Moraes. I'm not sure if it was ever translated to English. If it was, maybe the title is The Moral Laws by Rodolfo Caligares. The book Thought and Life by Chico Xavier and Emmanuel. The book The Problem of Life and Destiny by Leon Denis. The book Changing Attitude by Francisco do Espírito Santo Neto and the Spirit Ahmed. And the book Nosso Lar, Our Home, or Astral City, I believe it was the first title since it was translated to English, by Chico Xavier and André Luiz. So let's start discussing, trying to bring in the concept of freedom. Freedom, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants, without hindrance or restraint. It's also the ability to choose and act according to our will. Freedom is so important that it was classified as one of the 10 moral laws or divine laws or natural laws, as you prefer to call it. And just to refresh our memory, the list of 10... Oh, is something wrong about this slide? So let's try to... Yeah, not working, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the 10 moral laws, according to Spiritism: the law of worship, thank you, the law of labor, the law of reproduction, the law of preservation, the law of destruction, the law of society, the law of progress, the law of equality, the law of freedom, and the law of justice, love, and charity. We have already gone over the law of preservation and law of destruction when we discussed about spiritism and sustainability. We talked about law of progress on the talk about spiritism and the progress of humanity. I think it's okay. Yeah, thank you. Spiritism and the progress of humanity. And we talked about law of society during our last talk 3 months ago, when we talked about living together to evolve. Today we're gonna make another check on our list of moral laws. So, what do you think? Do we have freedom? Can we decide about what to do about our lives? Or do you think that everything is predetermined by God and there's nothing we can do about it? What do you think here? We have free will. Do we have freedom? Yes. I'll take yes as an answer. And then I'll go further. Since we have freedom, is our freedom absolute or relative? Relative. Okay. I will also take this as an answer. Oh, sorry. We are talking about the natural laws. I'd like to bring this reminder. On question 614, Kardec asked to the spirits what is meant by natural law. And the answer was natural law is the law of God, is the only law that is truly necessary for human beings to be happy. It shows them what they should or should not do, and they only suffer misfortune when they depart from it. And then on question 621, he asks, where is God's law written? And the answer was in the conscience. Okay, back to our topic. According to Rodolfo Caligares, in the book As Leis Morais, or which would be the moral laws in English, man is by nature the master of himself. That is, he has the right to do whatever he deems convenient or necessary for the preservation and development of his life. So in a general way, we all are free to decide, right? But most of the time we become prisoners because we follow tendencies, trends, and we follow the flow regarding things that are not necessary for us and can be the opposite, can obstruct our process of evolution and progress. And he goes on, however, this freedom is not absolute, nor could it be, for the simple reason that living in society, man has the duty to respect that same right in each of his fellow beings. Right? So because we live in society coexisting with other spirits, our freedom has a limit, right? And we have to respect this limit. When I first heard about the law of freedom and I found out that freedom is so important that it's a law of God, I felt really happy because I said, oh, I am free. I have freedom. But then I understand that it's not about my freedom. It's about how the expression of my freedom make consequences to others around me. So one of the two most important things of today that I expect that we can retain from this talk is how our actions, how the expression of our freedom is making consequence to the freedom of my neighbor. So, absolute freedom versus relative freedom. Question 825 of the Spirit's book. Are there positions in the world in which persons can flatter themselves by believing they are enjoying absolute freedom? And the answer was no, because all of you, the least as well as the greatest, need one another, right? We need each other here. So, and to have a good coexistence, we need to think about each other needs, each other feelings. I cannot act like I am by myself here. And he goes on, question 826. What would be a condition in which humans could enjoy absolute freedom? That of a hermit in the desert. As soon as two individuals are brought together, there are rights to respect, and they no longer have absolute freedom, right? So if I am a hermit, if I live by myself in the desert or wherever it is, I don't need to care about others' feelings, other needs. I'm there by myself. But the question is, I am really there by myself? Am I really alone? Because if we think about the material plane, maybe I am. But we need to remember that there is an interchange. Both planes, material and spiritual, we are connected, right? So I am not alone at all. And here's some statements about the limits of our freedom. Thomas Jefferson once said that rightful liberty is unobstructed action according to our will, within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. The spirit unmad by the mediumship, through the mediumship of Francisco do Espírito Santo Neto in the book Changing Attitudes said, duty begins exactly at the point where the happiness or tranquility of our neighbor is threatened, and therefore terminates at the limit we would not wish to be passed in relation to ourselves. So, for me to have rights, you have to have duty, right? So, for me to have a quiet and peaceful night, my neighbor cannot throw a party until the time they want. They cannot make noise until late, right? Even if it pleases him. So it's a matter of duty. So we all have rights, but we all have duty. And this is a popular saying: your right to swing your fist ends just where the other man's nose begins. Right? Simple and true. Something we must always remember. And we have lately talked a lot about empathy, right? Putting ourselves in someone else's place, trying to walk wearing their shoes, right? So, and this reminds us of the golden rule that Matthew brings in his gospel on chapter 7, verses 12. In everything, do to others what you would want them to do to you. There's no how to go wrong that way, right? And we need to go further here, because sometimes my expectation doesn't follow the common sense. So sometimes I can say, I don't understand why Bonnie got so upset because I did that to her. I wouldn't be. Okay, you wouldn't be. But do you follow the common sense? So let's try to go beyond our expectations. So law of freedom and law of society. Law of freedom and the law of society are complementary because we live in society coexisting and we need each other. Our freedom has some limits. We develop freedom through coexistence, not isolation, right? Because we need to understand that freedom is not exactly in doing what we want, whatever we want, whenever we want, right? Because with freedom comes something else. We are going to discuss ahead. But I'm talking about responsibility, right? For every action, there is a consequence. And there's no way to get away with this consequence, right? So the real freedom, maybe it's not doing wherever we want, but doing what can contribute to our evolution and our progress. Freedom versus slavery. Just to make it clear, I think it's never too much. Question 829. Are there human beings who are meant by nature to be the property of others? The answer was, every instance of subjection of one human being to another is contrary to the law of God. Slavery is an abuse of power and will gradually disappear with progress, as will all other abuses. And Kardec comments on that. Any human law that establishes slavery is a law against nature because it equates people with animals and physically and morally degrades them. Right? If you think about it, do the math here. Brazil, the abolition of slavery happened in 1888. Here in the US, 1865. So less than 200 years, right? So it was yesterday. If you think about it, yesterday we believe that someone could be our slave because of whatever the circumstance it was, the color of the skin or whatever, right? And nowadays we need to remember that although slavery is not something official and it's legally prohibited, it still happens. Maybe in a different way. Sexual slavery, labor conditions that are equal to slavery, right? So maybe this is something that we need to think about. Question 831. Doesn't the natural inequality of aptitudes place certain peoples under the subjection of the more intelligent ones? And about inequality of aptitudes. We will come back to it someday when we discuss the law of equality. Okay, but for now, the answer was yes. So the answer was yes. This inequality of aptitudes place some peoples under the subjection of the moral intelligent ones, in order to enable them to develop, but not to demean them still further by slavery. Human beings have long regarded certain races as domesticated beasts of burden, equipped with arms and hands, and have thought that they had the right to sell them as such. They have considered themselves to be of pure blood, the folly of those who do not look beyond matter. It's not the blood that must be purer or less pure, but the spirit, right? And again, less than 200 years ago. And we know that nowadays we still think that some people are superior than others because of some circumstances, right? And this reminds me of a passage of the book, I don't know if it was translated, please, you guys help me. Brasil, Coração do Mundo, Pátria do Evangelho. Not translated yet, I imagine that. If we could think of a title in English, could be literally Brazil, heart of the world, nation of the gospel. Okay, so there's a passage when Ismael, the spirit that is responsible, he was designated by God to help Brazil develop spiritually. And during the time Brazil was colonized by Portugal, Ismael has a meeting with Jesus, and he shares how sad and frustrated he is because Portugal were bringing people from Africa as slaves. And then Jesus said it was not a plan. The plan was indeed putting them together because European people would help African people, spirits that time, to come to the same place in intellectual development. But people from Europe decided that because of the call of their kings, they were superior to them, and then decided to make them slaves. But then Jesus said, we need to respect free will, right? We cannot change everything this way, that way. So we need to remember, never forget about slavery and how it's still happening in a way nowadays. Freedom of thought. Do we have freedom of thought? Can we think unlimitedly? Or there is some limits to our thoughts? Let's see what the Spirit's book says about it. Question 833. Is there something in human beings which escapes all constraint and through which they enjoy absolute freedom? It is through thought that they enjoy unlimited freedom, for thought knows no obstacles. Its manifestation may be hindered, but not erased. So we can think whatever we want, and you will know what I'm thinking now. And you can answer, are you happy to be here? And I can say, yes, I am. And if I am lying, if I'm not enjoying being with you, you will never know. I am enjoying being with you. Because thought is the only thing that we can hide for everyone. I mean, not everyone. There's someone or something that we cannot hide anything from. What or who am I talking about? God, exactly. God knows everything because God is everything. God is within us, right? So there's no way to lie to God, even in thoughts. Question 834. Are humans responsible for their thoughts? They are responsible before God. God alone can know their thoughts and condemn or absolve them according to divine justice. If we have a thought and we don't execute a bad thought, if we have a bad thought and we don't execute this thought, it means that we have already walked some miles in evolution, right? But in the future, we won't even have these thoughts, right? And when I said that thoughts are the only things that we can hide from anyone, let's think about that we are saying this at least in the material plane, because on the spiritual plane, it's not the same thing, right? We don't even need language to communicate there. So how can we hide our thoughts there, especially with the more evolved spirits, right? So let's keep this detail. So according to Emmanuel on the book Thought and Life, it is therefore understood that thought moves everything, creating and transforming, destroying and remaking in order to purify and elevate. So thought is a great tool to give us freedom, because sometimes we are prisoner to circumstance that exist only in our thought. Have you thought about that? How anxious we are sometimes thinking of things that will not come to happen. But we don't sleep well. We get anxious. We get we bring some disease to ourselves because of that, right? So thought is very powerful. So we should learn how to make a better use of thought, right? Trying to connecting more through the thought with our divine essence, right? So we could make a better use of it, because sometimes thoughts can destroy as well, can create, but can also destroy. Freedom of conscience. Question 835. Is freedom of conscience a consequence of freedom of thought? The answer was, conscience is an inner thought that belongs to persons, as do all their other thoughts. And here I'd like to make an observation, because I was confused, not confused, but it called my attention, the word conscience, because by watching Kirsten's talks about Joana de Angelis' books, she always or almost always says consciousness. And I asked myself, is there a difference between conscience and consciousness? Because in Portuguese, it's more like conscience than consciousness. And then my research showed me that conscience is more related to the moral aspect, and consciousness is more related to the awakeness or the awareness. So when we are awake, it's like our consciousness is active. But when we are judging between wrong and right, evil or good, we are using our conscience. And according to Leon Denis, in the book The Problem of Life and Destiny, consciousness here is the center of personality, a permanent and indestructible core that endures and remains through all the transformations of the individual. Consciousness is not only the faculty of perceiving, but also the feeling we have of living, acting, thinking, and willing. It is one and indivisible. So along our reincarnations, we will take different bodies with different characteristics and even different traits of personality. But our conscience will go with us. It will never regret. You'll never come back. You never decrease, let's put it that way. You ever progress with us. And even that sometimes superficially, I can disguise my conscience. I can pretend that it's not telling me anything. It is deep inside. I know that what I'm doing or say or thinking, it's not good, it's not right. So, freedom of conscience. Conscience, the faculty of making moral judgments or value assessments of own reality and that of others. So through our conscience, we are able to know, you know what, this is not right. This is not good. This is really bad. This is really wrong, right? Of our reality and that of others. Unfortunately, most of the time we are more worried and engaged in assessing others' actions, right? Because if I spend my time observing Yvonne, I took Yvonne today for my example. Observing Yvonne, and I said, you know, Yvonne always does that. I know it's not right. So how am I finding time to observe myself, right? So especially when I know that someone is able to do something that I'm not able anymore. Okay, so that guy killed somebody, and I spend my whole week talking about him. That's bad. That's not good. That's not right. So I'm not thinking about myself. I may not be able to kill anyone anymore, but what about the things that I'm still able to do? That's what I need to think about. That's what I need to pay attention, right? Not if someone is killing or doing anything bad. Conscience based on the moral parameters each person established for themselves. So here's the thing that I was saying about, on the surface, I may deny my conscience. You know, I'm doing this. No, I don't think it's wrong. I'm okay with that. The thing I said before, Yvonne was upset with what I said to her. I don't think it was a bad thing. But deep inside, I know it was a bad thing. Because my conscience is already there. It is already part of my conscience. And since we were created by God, we are made of divine sparks. Sometimes we can develop these sparks and develop and turn them into virtues, and sometimes we can just hide them for a while, not forever, right? So deep inside we know, because our conscience, it's like it's getting even more content every reincarnation. Conscience is the result of individual experiences and beliefs, shaped within the cultural context in which the human being is inserted, and it manifests according to the spiritual evolution of the individual. Again, on the surface, I may deny my conscience because I'm living in a social or cultural context that prevent me from expressing this conscience. So now I'm living in a country where doing this thing is okay, is allowed legally. And my whole life, I had been in touch with that. So I think it's okay. But deep inside, I know it's not. So this influence of culture and how society acts is just a temporary condition, because deep inside we know what is wrong and what is right. Freedom of conscience and proselytism. Proselytism is the act of attempting to convert someone from one belief, religion, or opinion to another. I don't know, maybe here, I'm not sure, but in Portuguese, we use the word proselytism much to religion topics, right? So we want to impose the way we think to another. So thank God we are not living this nowadays, right? We are living in harmony with other points of view. Yes, this is irony, I'm sorry. Sarcasm. Yes, unfortunately, we live in this era of intolerance. If you don't think the way I do, I don't know why you are alive, because you are a poor person, you are a poor being, right? So let's read this question 842. No, I'm sorry. Before that, we may, as spiritists, not moving around knocking on others' doors to talk about spiritism and imposing them, right? But we need to pay attention in that, because we are sure that we follow the doctrine of truth, right? I am sure that spiritism is the doctrine of truth, because it helps us to understand Jesus' teachings in a more clear, simple, and objective way, right? And because of that, we need to pay attention. If sometimes we don't look at our neighbors, at our brothers and sisters who don't believe, who sometimes ridicularize spiritism, and we don't think, oh, poor beings, you are going straight to hell, when you die, because I am evolved now. I am intellectually evolved now because I study spiritism, right? So we need to pay attention to this, because intellectual progress doesn't guarantee moral progress. It helps moral progress, but sometimes one can know everything about spiritism, explain well, but they don't put in practice, right? When someone that knows nothing about religion at all, doesn't believe in God, but acts according to law of God, without knowing that it's the law of God, right? So, and then now about the question 842. Since all doctrines claim to be the sole expression of the truth, by what signs can we recognize which one actually has the right to be presented as such? The answer was, it was not Spiritism, it was not Catholicism, it was not Protestantism, Buddhism. It will be the one that produces the fewest hypocrites and the greatest number of moral individuals, which means that they practice the law of love and charity in its greatest purity and widest application. Sorry. By this sign, you will recognize which doctrine is good, because those doctrines that result in sowing disunion and establishing divisions among God's children can be only erroneous and harmful. So if we could reflect a little bit on this, it's not actually a matter of which doctrine, but how we deal with the teachings of this doctrine. Because if you think about it, every doctrine, every religion has something good to help us to put in practice. But religions are human institutions, right? And if it's made and managed and ruled by men, we will find bad aspects of it. So what aspects am I trying to connect of this religion? The good ones or the bad ones? Right. So it's not about being Spiritist, Catholic, or whatever. It's about being good. It's about trying every day to identify the inferior traits of our personality, fight them, and turn them into virtues. Because, as I said, the virtues are here, created by God, since He or she created us, right? So it's a matter of how we act and not how the doctrine teaches us to do. Freedom and free will. Free will is the faculty by which an individual determines their own conduct, or, in other words, the possibility they have to choose among two or more sufficient reasons for wanting or acting one of them and make it prevail over the others. I think this picture, it's a great expression of free will, because we have two ways to follow, and it's up to us decide if I'm going to the right or the left way, right? So freedom is also an expression, or free will is also an expression of freedom. On question 833, do humans act with free will? The answer was, since they have freedom of thought, they have freedom of action. Without free will, human beings would be machines. There was a time in my life that I thought, oh, it would be so easier if we didn't have to decide, right? If God decided by us. I wouldn't make any sin, I wouldn't make any bad actions, so I wouldn't have to pay for it. But where is the merit of that, right? The merit is exactly making a good, that's what I said in the beginning. Thank you for making a good use of your free will and decided to be here today when there was so many more fun and relaxing things to do, right? But you decided to be here. So this is the merit. I had the two choices, the good and the bad, and I chose the good one. So that's the good use of free will. If it was not like that, I would be machine. How to say in English that puppet, that Muppet, yes. So, question 845. Aren't the instinctive predispositions that individuals bring at birth an obstacle to the exercise of their free will? The answer, instinctive predispositions arise from those of the spirit before its incarnation. Depending on how much the spirit has evolved, these predispositions can incite the individual to reprehensible acts, in which he or she will be aided by spirits who sympathize with such dispositions. However, there is no irresistible incitement if the individual has the will to resist. Remember, where there is a will, there is a way. Right? So that's why we incarnate, reincarnate with different spirits around us. That's why we are here in a planet of trials and expiations. And we look around and we sometimes we ask ourselves, are we really progressing? Yes, we are. But around us, there are so many different people that think in a different way from us. And sometimes we see people reincarnated in a family that you think it has nothing to do with the rest of the family. And that's the objective. Can you imagine a person reincarnating in a family of criminals? And this person is the only one who decides, I'm not following this way. I'm going in the opposite way. Can you see how great this use of free will is? And can you imagine if this person convert the others? If this person convince the others that it's not good, be a criminal, how wonderful would be the sensation going back to the spiritual plane, right? So we may have some predispositions, but it's up to us making use of them. The opposite, let's imagine that a person with very low evolution reincarnate in a family of virtuous persons. So virtual people, sorry. It's a way to do. Am I deciding to go on the opposite way of them, or am I following them? Right? So that's a good use of free will. 847. Can a distortion of the faculties deprive humans of their free will? That is a very good question. Because not everybody can make use of their faculties, right? Sometimes people incarnate with some mental conditions that they cannot make a proper use of their faculties. The answer was, those whose intelligence is impaired by any cause are no longer in complete control of their thought, and thereafter they have no more freedom. Such distortion is frequently a punishment for the spirit who might have been vain and proud and might have made bad use of its faculties in another existence. It may be reborn in the body of someone who is mentally impaired, as the despot in the body of a slave, and the spiteful wealthy person in that of a beggar. The spirit, however, is perfectly conscious of such constraint and suffers from it. It is in this constraint that one sees the action of matter. So how can I be responsible for my actions if I have not authority of my faculty, right? But every time I go to bed and I wake up in the spiritual plane, I remember everything. I know why I am in their body, right? So it's like, I know nothing about American law, but in Brazil, according to the penal law, the criminal law, if you commit a crime and you are under some influence, not caused by you, because there's no use in saying, I was drunk. Yeah, you decided to drink, right? But if you committed a crime under some influence regarding some mental condition, or someone is threatening you, if you don't do this, I'll kill you. So it's taken into consideration, right? So the same way I believe is with the law of God. Free will and fatalism. Fatalism is the doctrine that admits the course of events is predetermined and that nothing can alter it. So fatalism said that, you know what, you can work how much you can work, you can do whatever you want, but it won't change anything whatsoever. So there's nothing you can do. It's there. That's God's will. So I'll cross my arms and just wait and see. There's nothing I can do, right? So, and Kardec asked this question to the spirits on question 851. Is there fatalism in the events of life according to the usual meaning attached to the word? That is, are all events predetermined? And if so, what becomes of free will? The answer was, fatalism only exists when applied to the choice made by spirits upon incarnating to undergo this or that trial. Which means that all of us, or most of us here, we have chosen the trials of our reincarnation, right? So there's a song in Brazil, very famous, that the verse said, I didn't ask to be born. Well, you did. Yes, you did. And you asked to be born in these conditions, right? Upon choosing a particular trial, they delineate for themselves a kind of destiny, which is the proper consequence of the position in which they now find themselves. I am referring only to trials of a physical nature. As for moral trials and temptations, spirits preserve their free will to choose good or evil, and they are always able to yield or resist. So we all know about reincarnation plan, right? Our reincarnation, the conditions and circumstances of our reincarnation are not random. They are related to what we need to develop in terms of virtues, right? So, and that's a good exercise we can do. When we look around us and we observe some difficulties, some vicissitudes, and we say, oh, what am I supposed to learn with that? Right? There's something. Because God is love, God is good, is justice, is mercy. Why am I suffering with that? And there's circumstances that are part of our reincarnation are the ones necessary for us to be in peace with our conscience, right? To develop these virtues. So sometimes we cannot choose, right? Sorry. It's not your, I'm talking about the material plane. If I'm here, it's not I have nothing to do with the fact that I'm a man, you are a woman, that I am poor or rich, that my body is that way, that I have this disease or not, right? On the material plane, it's not my choice. It was when I was before reincarnating. But the way I deal with that circumstance are part of my free will. If I will rebel, if I will be humbled, resilient, right? If I will accept it, make everything to transform, if it's all right. I don't have to be here. Okay, if God makes me that way, it's necessary. There's nothing I can do. No, you can fight it. You can try to fight it, but not doubting the divine providence, right? So here's a picture of something about the Ministry of Elucidation of the book Our Home, where reincarnation is planned. It's in the chapter about Laura comes back, something like that. Right? And can we have discussed this here already, can we change the circumstance of most of them or some of them? I mean, if it's part of my reincarnation plan that during my 20s, let's put it behind, during my 20s, I will suffer an accident and that I will lose my leg. And then for some reason, I am working in favor of my brother and sister, and I've been useful to them. Now, there's a story about that, actually. There's a story of a man that used to burn the hands of the slavers in the previous life, and then it was part of his reincarnation plan to lose one of his arms. But then he works making toys to poor children. He'd make them very happy. So because of that, he only lost one finger, right? Because it was more useful. He had already understood the importance of solidarity and love, and it was more useful to spirituality keep him being able to make the toys than make him lose an arm. So that's how we are able to transform, to change the circumstance. In the book of Peter of the New Testament, he says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. So whatever have happened, whatever you have done, forget about it. Start loving unconditionally, because there's no circumstance that is unchangeable. I mean, not the physical ones, but that circumstance that are still to happen, you can change that, right? Freedom and responsibility. We are coming to the end. Freedom and responsibility. So, as I said before, there's no action There's no decision, there's no choice we made that we will not be responsible for that. My grandmother used to say a statement to me when I was a kid, and I only understood when I was an adult. I come back to it soon. Um, there is everybody has heard about the letters of Paul of Tarsus to the Corinthians, right? Corinthus was a city in Greece, very important, very wealthy, very commercially important. And because of that, to be commercially important and attract everybody, it had a cosmopolitan vibe, right? And people there were not very into moral. They were they like to live everything they want to live with no limits. And their logo was, I have the right to do anything. There's no limits. They believe in different gods, and they believe that everything they need, the gods will be there to help them as long as they made some sacrifices. And then after turning from a prosecutor to a defensor of Christianism, Paul of Tarsus spent 1.5 years in Corinth. And then he started to write and he founded a kind of church there with the new believers, the converters. And then he wrote some letters to them. On the first letter to the Corinthians, Paul said, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. That's what my grandma said to me. And I took some time to understand, right? You can do everything, right? And it happens to us. There's so many things that are not prohibited, are not illegal, and we can do. But are they good to us? Access of food, access of sex, access of drugs, because drugs can cure, but can also kill. Access of work, accesses of rest, access of care, right? So sometimes we are not prepared for such a freedom because we cannot make good use of it. So freedom and responsibility, according to Leon Denis. Freedom and responsibility are correlative in the human being and increase with their elevation. It is man's responsibility that constitutes his dignity and morality. Without it, he would be no more than an automaton, a plaything of environmental forces. The notion of morality is inseparable from that of freedom. Responsibility is established through the testimony of conscience, which approves or censures us according to the nature of our actions. Even if human freedom is limited, it is at least on the path to full development, for progress is nothing more than the extension of free will in the individual and the collective. Free will is, therefore, the expansion of personality and consciousness. To be free, it is necessary to desire freedom and make an effort to attain it. Liberating ourselves from the slavery of ignorance and base passions, replacing the rule of sensations and instincts with that of reason. So sometimes, as I said in the beginning, we are free, but we became prisoners. We talk about that during the talk of Spiritism and sustainability, how sometimes by following the flow, because my neighbor has a car that's so expensive, everybody in my job department has this car, has this device, and I don't. So I feel inferior, and I want to have, and because that, I am making expenses that are not necessary to me, right? Is it freedom? Or freedom is exactly the opposite. The power and the courage to go to the opposite way of the flow. Yeah, go. I don't need to go with you. I'm going a different way. That is freedom. So, the question, are we truly free? On the second letter to the Corinthians, Paul says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. What does it mean? How can I know where the Spirit of the Lord is? Well, first of all, God is within us. We have said that, right? And it means that by fulfilling the laws of God, by following these rules, we can find freedom. Because we will be free from our vices, our imperfections that are preventing us to achieve relative perfections and then true happiness. André Luiz, on the book Our Home. Here, however, we go through a readjustment of values and learn that we are never really free until we learn to obey. It seems paradoxical, but it's the perfect truth. Have you think about it? When we were kids, or for those who have children, we will never leave them walk by themselves until we are sure that they are responsible, that they can obey, right? I remember my father didn't allow me to drive his car until he was by my side while I was driving, and he saw the way I drive, if it was responsible or not. And that's how God does with us. So our freedom is proportional to our capacity to obey, to follow the rules. That's the real freedom. Sorry. For to everyone who has more, I forgot to mention this chapter of the gospel, I'm sorry. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have will be taken away. This is something that I never understood. I took a while to understand, actually. How can I have nothing and it would be taken from me, right? So that's also about freedom. If you deserve freedom, you will have more freedom. But if you don't deserve, if you have shown that you don't deserve freedom, the little freedom you have will be taken from you. Right? I'm so sorry I forgot to mention this part of the gospel. But so, my friends, as I said before, I think that we are free, but we need to deserve and make a better use of this freedom, because sometimes the bad use of the freedom takes us to prison. And as Paul also said, I don't want to be mastered by things. I need to be the master of things. We are rational beings, right? So I should be the master of things. And when I say things, I'm not referring only to material things, but feelings, fear, sentiments in general, right? So we need to be able to control our feelings, to control everything and not be controlled by them. I believe this is something that can be similar to freedom. Okay, I believe that was I had to share with you today. And I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wendell. I think you already have our first question.
Thank you so much, Wendell. That was very good review from the Spirit's book, and also the insight that you brought about these questions. So I guess the answer is yes, but ... right? So during your presentation, I was thinking about this topic, and one of the things that came to my mind is the unconscious bias that we have, right? So if we input this in our life, the answer would be we are not truly free, right? And nowadays, in our society that we live, we have a lot of this from the present life, but also we bring this from past life. I would like to see what you have to say about the unconscious bias. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Well, I think the first step is identifying this, be open to not be that, so straight about that, and think about it sometimes. Am I considering everything around this topic, about this fact? Am I taking everything into consideration? Because sometimes we act so blind about something, and we don't know why. Maybe that's about the unconscious bias that you are mentioning. So I think that trying to open our minds and hearts to all aspects of the situation and ask yourself, okay, would that be a different way? Would that work in a different way? But we are in a very automatic and mechanical lifestyle now that we follow the flow in everything, especially nowadays when we have two sides, right? The polarization. So if you're not on this side, you are on this side, and I want you to come to my side. If you don't come to my side, there's something wrong. And I don't want to discuss. I want just to prove myself right. So I think that this bias stands around that unavailability to be open. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the final slide. This rejection to be open to, think twice. Why to be so straight about it, right? I don't know, maybe, Daniel, it could help.
Anyone else want to ask a question or comment? Yes, Paula.
Thank you very much. It's good to review important topics that I don't think about every day. I'm still thinking about how freedom is influenced by your culture. And because I have a curiosity, and there are many people in the room who are immigrants, my curiosity is, does freedom play a role in becoming an immigrant? I mean, obviously, in something like Afghanistan, you need to escape all the trauma. But if you come from, let's say, Brazil or Argentina or something where you still have a good lifestyle, but come here, is freedom part of it?
Thank you for the question, Miss Paula. Well, I think that I might say that our freedom gets much more limited in certain circumstances. Yes, because I think immigrants, we maybe act in a different way. We pay attention much more on things, on how we are living our lives, because we are in a foreign country. So I don't know, maybe there's the two sides of the situation. Thinking about me, I've always had this personality to go out, discover the world. But by living in a different place, I think it brings me this impression that our freedom comes a little bit more limited, because we need to act more. We need to be in an excellence that maybe in our country we didn't have to, But I would say, if I could answer your question more objectively, I would say that depends on the perspective, because there are these two perspectives. To be free to meet different things, to be in touch with different cultures, I think that's a good expression of freedom, because it expands our knowledge, our intellectual progress. But in a practice way, maybe it puts some more limit in what we. But I think it's good as well, because it helps us to be more obedient, right? Maybe it's a necessity of some of us, to be more under a more straight eyes, to be more obedient. I don't know. I hope I have. We can discuss it more as I'll be your guest.
Yes, Ivani.
I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question. When you were talking about freedom of thought, and then you said we had freedom of thought, but then I thought of this, and you touched on it a little bit. We are influenced by the spirit world too, and that really can have an influence. And is it really freedom of your thought, or is it the thought of the spirit, of spirits, based on what you're thinking? I mean, you get into this loop thing, because if you're thinking good thoughts, you're going to attract certain good spirits, and vice versa. So that was just
That
where
was
my
a-
mind went.
Thank you. That was a great observation because, yes, we sometimes act because we are being influenced by spirits, right? And this goes completely against of the law of freedom. Because as I said, remember when Ismael went to talk to Jesus about how frustrated and sad he was, and Jesus said, well, we have to respect free will, regardless if it goes to a good or a bad way. And some spirits do it with us. If we open our guard, they will approach to us, uh, attracted by us, by our thoughts, by our actions. We cannot play the victims all the time. Sometimes we make the way comfortable and easier to them. But once they start to influencing us, they are going against the law of freedom because they are disrespecting our free will, right? And as I said, this will be taken into consideration. If we act under the influence of spirits, when I said under the influence, it's not alcohol or drugs. If we act under the influence of spirits, it may be taken into consideration. But I will always also repeat, as I said about being driving drunk. You decided to drink, and regarding the influence of spirits, you attracted them. So what I have to say about that to help us avoiding this situation is try to keep good thoughts and especially good actions. We do the gospel at home every week, and it always comes to my mind. Okay, the spirits will protect your house from bad spirits, but if you attract them, the spirits will respect your free will. If you are nourishing acts and thoughts that will attract the bad spirits, maybe yes, spirits maybe inferior or in a different way of evolution. You are attracting them to your house. Your protector will do nothing about it. It's like during the mediumship sessions. Sometimes we had back in Brazil, I was part of these sessions, and sometimes we had a very obsessive spirit that threatened us and said, if you don't stop doing this, you see what I'm doing to you and your family. And right after that, comes a protective spirit and said, don't worry, this is not your work, it's ours. It's our work, it's our job. You are being intermediate resource to it. But okay, we are being protected by them. But if we leave the center and we start acting in a way to attract these spirits, they will come next to us, close to us, and there's nothing to be done about it, right? So yes, I think we can, trying to answer more objectively, we can be influenced by, our thoughts can be influenced by spirits when we connect with them. There's no invasion, right? If our doors, our gates are closed, they won't be able to open. But if we open the gates and invite them, okay, we are opening the way. Thank you, Ms. Yvonne.
Anybody else? Do we have any questions or feedback online? I just wanted to add, based off this Q&A portion, in the book Facets and Patterns of Obsession by Givaldo and by Manuel Firmino de Miranda. So there's the main story, or the main plot, although there's many many cases throughout the book. The main story that the main characters of the book, of the storyline, is a spirit or an incarnated person named Argos, and he's married to someone, planet Earth, and he develops tuberculosis, and then he ends up, it's a long story, but he ends up getting cured, and he is given a moratorium, and the spirits describe that for a short period of time, they don't give the actual, they don't quantify it, but for a short period of time, let's say 2 weeks, he was going to be protected. So none of his obsessing spirits will be able to make him sick or do anything, and no one could negatively impact him, because they needed the healing work that the good spirits did, for it to take, to his paraspirit, and then, to his physical body. So it makes me think about, this is free will so relative, right? Because we're constantly being influenced by something. So we're constantly making mini decisions every day that either are benefiting us or not. So I think, like Paula was saying, this is a great topic to revisit again. and remind ourselves that we do have this free will, and we have to be really conscientious of what we're doing, what we're thinking. I think what you shared was great. So thank you for that.
And I would add to that that this limit to our free will is a proof of God's love. Because can you imagine if we could do whatever we wanted and have to face the circumstance? Because we are so weak. We don't remember what we, of course, this not remembering is also a proof of God's love. But we never remember. The guy that from the story that I said that lost one finger was complaining a lot and rebelling about God, and God doesn't exist. Look at my finger. I do toys to children, and he takes one of my fingers, but he couldn't remember what he had agreed before incarnating. And so that's how we act, right? So thank God we have limits to our free will, but someday we will be obedient. We will be able to obey, as Andrea Luis said, and then we will be master of our freedom, hopefully.
Wendell, thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was inspiring and great reminders. So now, if no one else has anything additional to ask or share, we can transition to our moment of passes, Daniel. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Wendell. And thank you for those who